Hey, Baylor fans, this is your call to gear up with Harley-Davidson of Waco. Whether you're hitting the open road or tailgating at McLean Stadium, we've got the ride to match your Bear pride. Check out our wide selection of new and pre-owned motorcycles, visit our service department, or shop all the latest gear and accessories to show off your Baylor spirit and Harley pride. Visit us today and find your freedom on two wheels. Harley-Davidson of Waco, where Baylor fans never ride alone. Visit in-store or at hdwaco.com. Sic Em Bears. Welcome into the Sic Em Podcast presented by Harley-Davidson Waco, and we welcome in Baylor soccer coach Michelle Lenard in season. Great to have you with us, and we appreciate you being on the Sic Em Podcast.
Happy to be here, John. Thank you.
Yeah, how about that? How about let's go back. Let's get a little historical perspective. You grew up in Lubbock. What high school in Lubbock?
I graduated from Coronado High School.
All right, Coronado High School. Soccer in high school, was that your only sport, or did you have other sports you were playing?
It was my primary sport in high school. I played softball growing up, ran track, did a little bit of everything up until I started to do a lot more club soccer later in high school and then focus primarily on that. Gotcha.
And then out of high school, I just learned this. You were actually recruited by Baylor. Is that right?
Yeah, I came to a camp at Baylor. I think maybe between my sophomore and junior and senior year in high school, and then came on a recruiting trip. It was actually the first time I ever flew in an airplane was from Lubbock to Waco on a tiny little puddle jumper, where I found out quickly that I get motion sick very easily.
Oh, great.
Came out to Waco, went on a visit, and ended up at North Texas, but had a good visit out to Waco. Always was drawn to Baylor.
That's funny. That's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, you think about the path of your profession and the path of your career, how it might have been different if you'd come to Baylor originally.
Yeah, it's really weird to think about. In fact, my college roommate, both of us were at that same camp. And so we met there, went to school somewhere else. We're best friends to this day. Wow. And now she's a big Baylor fan now as well.
Terrific. That's great. Well, roundabout way, but you're both at Baylor, and Baylor, you're doing great, and she's a Baylor fan. So that's really cool. You went to UNT, and what was your collegiate career like for you, playing career?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great experience in college. My team, the biggest takeaway, I think I look back on, the biggest highlight was we only lost 2 games at home in my entire 4 years in college. And so we were really proud of our home record. We had some conference championships. University of North Texas is a really top mid-major who's competed at a high level in soccer for decades now. In fact, John Hedlund, who's the coach there, just got his 400th win. So
wow,
really good mid-major program who attracts a lot of DFW kids out to that area. I was from West Texas, but ended up in Dallas, but enjoyed my experience. Knew I wanted to get into coaching. And then right after I graduated, went straight into coaching, was an assistant at Texas Women's University, and then back to North Texas, where I was an assistant before becoming a head coach. So spent a lot of time in Denton and a lot of time at UNT.
That's great. So you knew you wanted to get into coaching. What's the background there? Any other coaches in your family?
There's not. And so I was actually the first person in my family to go to college. And I don't know when I determined that I wanted to be a coach, but it was prior to college, because if you go back and read the newspaper article back when we actually read newspapers about my National Letter of Intent signing day, I quoted in there that I chose North Texas in part because of access to coaching education and opportunities to develop it so that I could coach. So I knew at 17 years old I wanted to coach. And that going to the Dallas area was going to give me opportunities to do that. And but I don't know where that came from. I didn't grow up around it. And soccer out in West Texas was really pretty limited growing up. But I love sports. I love to compete. I always felt like I had a natural instinct for leading and coaching, so was drawn to it.
I would think that's kind of unique when you're 17 years old. You know what you want to do, and you go that direction and end up doing what you hope to do when you were 17.
Yeah, I think that is pretty unique. I mean, obviously I coach young people, and very few of them at 17 know what they want and stay with it. And that's okay. That's okay too. We got to figure out what we want to do with our life between the ages of 18 and 22. But God really placed it on my heart early that was the direction. And it was more than about just soccer. It was about developing people and having influence in an environment that was really critical phase of life for college students. And so I feel really blessed. I'm probably the only person in my life that I know that did that chose early and stuck with that path. My husband went a couple different ways. My friends went a couple different ways, and they all ended up with great careers. But I was fortunate to know from day one what I was called to do.
Wow, that's very cool. How about, so you played at North Texas, you said you went right into coaching, but there was some semi-pro playing days also, weren't there? How'd that factor in?
I played some. I still continue to play some when I was coaching, but before graduating high school or college, before graduating college, I spent a couple summers playing semi-pro in a couple different locations. When I graduated, the Women's Professional League at the time had folded, and there was not a Women's Professional League in the U.S., and I'd also just torn my ACL for the second time. And so I was coming off of an ACL injury. There was no pro league. I was destined to get straight into coaching. After I got into coaching, I still continued to play at like a semi-professional level for a while, when I was young and could balance both, but eventually transitioned 100% into coaching.
You've been through 2 torn ACLs?
2 ACLs, another knee surgery as well as 2 back surgeries. So I've had my fair share of soccer-related injuries.
Good grief. Well, hopefully it's safer for you on the sidelines.
Sometimes. I was a coach when I hurt my back, actually. So,
oh, no, really?
Playing with a bunch of 18-year-olds.
Good grief. So TWU, and then you went to back to your alma mater and coached at North Texas also.
Yeah, I was there for about 3 years. And then I actually left for a brief period of time. My husband, who works in the insurance world, after Hurricane Katrina, was located in Louisiana for 2 years. Wow. And so during that phase, I was still at North Texas coaching, and he was in Louisiana, and it was really early on in our marriage. And so I opted to leave coaching briefly to go be with him in Louisiana. And I kind of supported his career path and helped him do what he was doing, and came back. And then after that is when I was given the opportunity to become the head coach at Dallas Baptist University, where I then spent 14 years. Wow.
Was that that time when you were away from coaching, did it kind of, I don't know, did you feel like you really missed it? I mean, kind of whet your appetite to get back into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I never really wanted to leave it. It just was what made sense for our family at the time. And so we made that decision and felt like God honored that and blessed that, and brought an opportunity as we came back to Dallas and got settled back at home. And there were some things I considered doing, but just nothing ever stuck. Nothing ever felt right. I always wanted to be on the field.
Gotcha. How did it transpire? How did it play out to get the job at DBU, the head coaching job there?
Well, so this is kind of a longer answer. That's a little bit deeper. I don't know on this podcast. I guess I might as well throw it out there. But
we're good.
So when we were in Louisiana, my husband and I actually became pregnant for the first time. This is way before my boys that I have now. And we came home to have our first child, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be coaching or not. And then unfortunately, really unfortunate situation, but at full term, we lost our first child, our daughter, Avery, to a court accident. It's a terrible tragedy that happens like 1% of the time. So after that happened, I was really trying to figure out what, I was going to do with my life. Our family was struggling through recovering from a tragedy, and I'm trying to find some direction. And some friends of mine actually were visiting with us. This was New Year's Eve, like 2 months after this loss had occurred. And they were asking me, are you going to go back to coaching? And I didn't know, I was really struggling at that time. I thought, I don't know what my future holds. And they were really encouraging me, like, this is what you're called to do. This is what you were made for. Like, you got to get back out there. So the next day I got on the NCAA marketplace and looked, and the Dallas Baptist University head coaching job had just posted that day. Wow. And so I went to the website. I didn't know much about the job or much about the school. But right then when I opened the website, there was a Bible verse on the front page that was the very same Bible verse that I opened my Bible to on that horrible day in the hospital when we got the worst news of our life, Jeremiah 29:11. And I knew in that moment, like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I was 26. I had no head coaching experience. I didn't have a master's degree, and they wanted a master's degree, but it didn't matter to me because I knew that's where God was calling me. And so I reached out to them. I applied for the job. It took a while. I was persistent. I kept on knocking on that AD's door until he gave me a meeting. And then I shared the story that I just shared with you, the truth, which was I felt called there, and here was why. And they gave me a chance. And so I really felt like it was 100% in God's plan for me to be at DBU because of that experience. And also God really redeemed our family through our time there. I had my boys during that time there as well. So that was part of the reason why it was so hard for me to leave when the time came to leave, was I was emotionally connected, but also the Lord really blessed us with clear direction when it was time to come to Baylor as well. I needed that. I needed to know this was the next step, and we got that in that moment. So that was a deeper probably answer than you were expecting, but that's how I ended up at DBU, and then how I ended up 14 years later at Baylor.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry for your loss, even 17 years later, of Avery, but thanks for sharing with us. And it really was, it sounds like divine timing for you to see that job, for that job to be open and be able to tell that story and get that job at DBU.
Yeah, it definitely was. And the Lord really allowed me to invest in young people at that time while I felt like I was trying to figure out where our life was headed next. And I had all this love and energy to give. And so it was a blessing for us. And then also just put me in a place where I could pour out into others in a way that I felt really, really called to do. So I've always, not a situation I would ever choose for myself for sure. But, the Lord directed us through that and blessed that situation despite how difficult it was.
Well, thanks for sharing. Really appreciate that. What great success, 14 years at DBU. What was that time like for you?
I was a young head coach when I started. As I mentioned, I was 26 at the time. I was pretty inexperienced. I had been an assistant for a few years. So it was a lot of growing. I was ambitious and competitive, but not necessarily like understanding of how to really run a program. So there was a lot of learning kind of on the fly, but I like to think I'm a fast learner and love to learn and love to grow. And so first few years was really building that program and just really trusting that the Lord had a plan for me and for the program. And it just continued to get better every year. And by about year 4, we were winning conference championships and making it to the NCAA tournament. And then from that point on, we were consistently winning conference championships and making it to the NCAA tournament. And then toward the end of my 14 years there, we were always a top team, a top 10 nationally ranked team, finishing out at the Final Four. That last year, right before that all kind of unfolded, right as the opportunity to come to Baylor came up, I was dealing with, my team making it through NCAA tournament run into the Final Four and an opportunity to come to Baylor. So there was a lot happening in my life. Probably the two most pivotal moments in my career happened kind of at the same time. It was wild, but again, it was I loved it. I had a great experience there. It's a great place. That really helped me grow and develop both as a coach and as a person. And my kids were born there and practically raised on those soccer fields. My youngest son was born in October, so was on the field a week after he was born. And so he's the one you'll often see on the sideline with me. He loves being out there and feels totally at home on a soccer field.
Yeah, he was practically born on a soccer field, wasn't he?
He almost was, yeah.
That's great. Well, again, great success there at DBU. And sounds like you were you were a young coach and you were learning on the job, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think all the experiences that I had through 17 years of coaching has helped me deal with, big moments like COVID and the new changes that are going on in NCAA. So, experience, it's hard to beat and it takes time. And I feel like now with 17 years of that under my belt, I feel pretty prepared for just about anything that can come our way.
Who would you say, Michelle, would be your mentors in coaching?
Well, that's a great question. I think, one of my closest friends, Fleur Benatar, she's an assistant coach at the University of Houston. She was the head coach at Texas Women's University when I became a graduate assistant. So I graduated. She had been an assistant at North Texas and then started the program at TWU, which both in Denton. And so she had coached me and then hired me as a grad assistant. And then when I went back to North Texas, she supported that move. And then when I became a head coach, she was still at TWU and we played against each other. So she really helped guide me and direct me through what coaching education to do, how to get my foot in the door, becoming a young head coach because she was a very young head coach. And now we're best friends to this day. Our kids are the same ages. We've really kind of grown up on the field together. And she's about 5 years ahead of me in life. So she's had enough experiences that she was really helpful in those moments. She's probably one of the biggest influences. And then along the way, I've met a lot of other coaches, not all soccer coaches. A lot of the people that I interacted with at DBU that had been there for years. Blake Flickner, the basketball coach there, Dan Hefner, the baseball coach there, all great influences that I got to witness in person and work side by side with for the 14 years that I was there and learn a lot about not just developing players, but developing people. And I think my time at DBU had a huge impact on that because they do a great job there of developing the holistic person, especially on the spiritual side. And those guys were great mentors in that way.
Yeah. What you're saying is there's some similarities in that realm between Baylor and DBU. Have you seen that play out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the things when I was making the decision about coming that I was really drawn to is the opportunity to continue doing what I was doing there, but at the Power 5 level, Power 4 now. But to do it at the elite level with the best of the best, but continue to be able to invest in student athletes' lives beyond the soccer field, continue to be able to live out my faith in my job day to day. That was something that was really critical to me, but to be able to do that at this level was the only thing that was going to take me away from a place that I loved being. And so it's been a great decision. Baylor is really intentional about that and really make sure that that is the priority. And it's something I really admire about the university, because it's hard to do that at this level. It's hard to do that at an institution our size. But from the top down, president to athletic director to everyone in administration, it is the number one priority and something that I'm very proud to be a part of.
Yeah, amen to that. That's great. So was it 21 that you went to the Final Four?
Yes. Yeah, 2021.
All right, so that's happening. Great season going. And then all of a sudden, here's Baylor calling you in the middle of all that. How did you juggle all that at that one same time?
Yeah, that's another kind of funny story. And I think I've told this story a couple times before, but we were we're in season when this job became available, when Paul retired, and it became public news that this job was open, and people were reaching out to me saying you should apply. It seemed like a natural fit because of the similarities between the schools. My husband was like, you need to at least throw your name in the hat and see what happens. But being a deeply loyal person and highly focused on trying to win, I felt conflicted because we were in season. And so I told my husband, I was like, I'm trying to win a national championship. I just don't think I can do that right now. Like, I need to stay focused on where we are. I said, but if Baylor calls me, then we'll have to take it serious. And my husband very lovingly said, Baylor's going to call you? I was like, no, probably not.
That's funny.
Probably not. And he didn't mean it mean. He just meant
right.
Put your name in there, And so we left it at that. And then, fast forward a couple weeks, it's Thanksgiving break. We have a little bit of a window between our last NCAA tournament game and our next NCAA tournament game, which was the regional that we were hosting at home to advance to the Final Four. Someone from Baylor called my athletic director at DBU. And so he called me. I think it was Kevin, actually, thinking back.
Nice. Uh-huh.
And then so he called me and he told me, Baylor called. They want to reach out to you about this position. So my husband can tell you the story better than I can. But we were both home. He was working. I walked into his office after I got off the phone. He says he was on the phone. He looked up and he thought something's wrong because he's in my face, and I looked a little bit distraught. And he told the person on the phone, "I got to go. Something's wrong." He gets off the phone, and I just said, "Baylor called." And nothing was wrong, but I just knew our life was about to change. I knew. We have young kids. Our kids are teenagers. And so at the time they were both in one was in elementary and one was in middle school. And so I just could foresee all this happening, and I was really excited, but also nervous about what that meant for our family. But in that moment, just like in the moment when I knew I was supposed to go to DBU, I knew because God I was so grateful because I desperately needed really clear direction in that time.
Yeah. You knew, but it had to have been tough leaving what you had built at DBU.
Yeah. It was tough. It was. I mean, I knew I was going to be taking over a little bit of a rebuild, just being that it was going to be a different philosophy and style of play and, going into a big job. And the previous coaching staff was loved and adored by their team, which is awesome. I love those guys as well. They're great people. We have a little bit of different approach to how we play the game and philosophy on the game. So that was going to be challenging. And then moving into Power 4 athletics, is challenging for a number of other reasons. But I knew if I was going to do it, this was the right time. My kids were not quite in high school yet. If we were going to uproot our family and move, it was going to be the right time to do it before they got to high school. And also I wanted to go somewhere I could stay. I wasn't looking to move around. I wasn't looking to just try to climb any kind of ladder. It was about being in the right place. And for us, Baylor checked all those boxes, and the Waco community has been great. We've moved down here, and our kids are in Lorena School District, and they've loved their experience here so far. Smaller than what they were accustomed to back living in Grapevine, where my kids were going to school previously. But it was hard. It was really hard for me to leave. But because of being a deeply loyal person, it just took some time. But now that I've been here for 3 years, I feel the same way about Baylor that I felt about DBU, and super grateful that I took that risk. And I'm really happy DBU continues to be successful and are doing really, really well. I'm very proud of that program. But this is my family and my home now. I'm really proud to be here.
That's great. It's a great story. How about your boys at Lorena? Are they in athletics?
Yeah, both of them play football. Player. Both of them, yeah. Both of them had football games last night. One of them's in high school. The other one's in middle school. They both do track. They both pole vault, actually, and they really enjoy pole vaulting. My youngest son also plays basketball. My oldest son plays soccer. So they do a little bit of everything, but they've enjoyed it. It's been a great, great experience, and they're big football guys. So that's probably their favorite sport. I know my oldest really likes soccer, but he also really enjoys football. So my husband was a football player, so they get a lot of that.
Oh, nice. Very good. Where would you say your third season here at Baylor, are you on the trajectory that you would like for yourself and for the program?
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're right where we thought we would be. We're progressing. We're winning games we weren't winning last year. We played a really tough schedule, but we're being very competitive in that schedule. I think we're 7-5-3 right now with a winning record. We've got 2 big wins against nationally ranked opponents, 2 big ties against nationally ranked opponents. And so we've had a really, really good start to the year. We've made progress, had a great result last night against Arizona State in the conference, which was important. We needed a big result at this point in the conference. So we are right where we want to be. We've made big progress in the last 3 years, but now we have to continue winning and just continue managing the pressure that comes along with winning. And so that's kind of where we are now is get comfortable being here and used to, being in this position and find ways to win here at the end of the season.
Good. I think I know the answer to this, but are you a patient coach? Can you be patient and see those steps of progress, or do you want it today?
I mean, I think I live in reality. And so, yeah, patience is challenging for me for sure.
Yeah.
But I recognize that things take time. What I want is for my team to live up to its potential. That's all I really care about. And so if I'm being impatient, it's because I feel like we're capable of more and we're underachieving. And I'm not going to ever ask us to, do something we're not capable of doing. And there's certain things that's just going to take more time, certain levels to get to. But right now we can compete with anybody in the country. And I know that. And so I feel really good about whoever we step on the field to play against. I'm working on my patience. It's not a gift I was born with, but it's what keeps me motivated and ambitious, and I think is important in this profession. But it's always good. Having kids has helped maybe a little bit, developing some patience.
Yeah, there you go. I know you just had senior night also. What was that like? You had some seniors that you celebrated that go back to DBU days, right? Yeah,
we had 8 seniors last night that we recognized, 3 or 4 of which were here when we got here and have played 4 years at Baylor and have gone through a significant transition with us and have just been awesome in helping us make that transition. And then we've had one of those, Marissa Gray, who came back after graduating and got a second senior year. And then Ashley Merrill and Blythe Obar. Blythe is coming back next year because she redshirted this year due to an injury. But those 2 were freshmen in 2020 during the COVID year. So they're 5th years this year. And then Blythe will have a 6th year with her redshirt year next year. And so I've coached those kids for a long time. We went through COVID together. We went to the Final Four together. And then we went through the transition to Baylor together and now Blythe's injury. So there's a lot of history there for sure. So it was bittersweet last night to stand there and support all of the seniors, the ones that have been at Baylor for 4 years and the one that transferred with me. Really proud of the group as a whole. They've really come together and just built something really special, and it's taken all of them to do that. And it was fun. It was fun to get a big win. It was fun to see Ashley score on senior night. I thought that might happen. That's the type of thing she's usually capable of doing. But all in all, it was a really great night.
Good. Final thought, what Mac tells us is preparing champions for life. That's what we do in Baylor athletics. I know you're hard enough to know that you really buy into that, and that's the way you run your program, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that soccer is going to end someday for everybody, whether they play professionally or not. They're going to go into the real world and they're going to become wives and mothers and doctors and lawyers and teachers and coaches. And, we have all kinds of things on our team. Our kids are super smart and they're going to go out and they're going to change the world. And so we take our responsibility really seriously to develop them for life after soccer and life after Baylor. And we know a big part of that is their spiritual development. And that's something that we really challenge and encourage them in and support them in as well. And I think that's something that makes Baylor really special. But this is not just about soccer. And if it is, we're missing the point because one day, 15, 20 years from now, they're not going to look back and remember exactly the score in a specific game or, how things went on the soccer field, how many minutes they played. But instead, they're going to have these relationships that they developed with their teammates, these life lessons. I have players that I've coached from a decade ago that reach out to me regularly saying, I'm going through this in life, and man, my time as a college athlete really helped prepare me for that. And I love that. Those are my favorite calls. And that's what we take the most serious. So we're here to compete and win championships, but we believe that you can do both. You can compete and win championships and prepare them for life after Baylor and after soccer. And I think that's what really makes Baylor special.
Wow, that's great. It's very well said. Thanks for your time. Continued success wrapping up the regular season, and we hope right into postseason. Thanks for being on with us.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.